All right, so what do we got here, guys, is a JDXI synthesizer, and we've hooked it up from MIDI out into the Noodler, which is this new thing that I've got. It's basically a MIDI controller with arpeggiator type patterns in it. If you don't know about it, there's plenty of videos on YouTube. I might do something more about this later. And I've also got the Blofeld here. What I'm using on the Blofeld is, you can see here that I've got 4 MIDI channels out of the multi-timbral side of the Blofeld, and I've muted the rest. You might remember me doing a video a couple of years ago on the JDXI and how it's got this thing called an interactive chord mode. And basically we can listen to the synths. Right, now when we play a chord on the JDXI and we're in chord mode, it automatically tells us up here what chord we're playing. And not only does it do that, but it also transposes the sequences that are built into the 4 parts of the JDXI. And what I've decided to do is I've decided to try and see if I can get the Noodler to transpose the motifs and the pads and the drone to a track that I've recorded here, which is digital part 2. But digital part 2 just has a chord and its amp is muted, so you can't actually hear this track. And that's coming out on MIDI channel 2. So it's MIDI channel 1, 2, 10 for drums, and 3 for analog synth. Now if you go into the menu settings in here, and on the Blofeld, I'm not using anything other than MIDI channel 4, 5, and 6, so nothing will override each other. So I'm not playing any notes, and if you go to that second page here, you can see I'm not playing any notes out of those other channels, just 4, 5, and 6, so we're all good. When MIDI channel 2 plays a chord, it's receiving this from this setting here, the Noodler control, right? And when I change a chord in here, that's a D, or D minor to be precise. When I go to C, it'll change it on here. So the only way to do this though is to actually press play and get it going. So let's just press play on here. And what we might do is we'll mute the drums and the bass synth for now, just to get, there's nothing playing, you can't hear anything, but there is actually patterns playing. Okay, but they're all muted. Now, if we set off a Motif here, right, and we're actually playing in the chord of C at the moment, so we can just hit a C up here and we're hearing the strings. That sounds beautiful. We can add a second motif. Now this is where the magic happens, guys. I'm going to change it to a D minor, which will be a D on here. See how it changed? Now go back to C. So the JDXI's chord mode is transposing based on the root note of the chord that we play, and that's corresponding out of that digital channel 2, which I'm not using to hear volume, but I'm actually using it as a sequence. Now what we can do is add those parts back in the drums. Now you can see how it's all synchronized beautifully there. Let's try a G minor. Let's try A. Let's try an F. Then we can introduce the drone. still in C at the moment. Now we go to D. So A. We can mute all these parts as we go. Alright, so that works okay. There's a few issues with it. For example, if I was to play like an A sharp or a B flat, right? Depending on the chord settings on here, whether I'm on major, minor, pentatonic, whatever those sort of settings are, it's no perfect calibration. So if I'm going from a minor to a major to, if I'm doing that sort of major sort of minor Dorian, those sort of major changes in my chords, it doesn't like it. So the way around that would be to change my chord. If I change that to channel 1 and then I'm playing chords, it's reading those chords straight away. Okay. But even still, when I do that, that means that I can't then transpose the sequences on here at the same time. So I think the better way to go about it is how I've done it, and just persevere with those changes as I go. So it's pretty cool. So, you know, as we're playing, so that's D minor, and we can add this motif. Still in tune. I mean, it's really not a major issue with it. You just have to bear in mind that some of the more advanced chord changes are not possible. So the song has to be. You could use a different synthesizer for that. So that's a C minor, right? And it's coming through as a C major here. We could change our chord key to a minor. So now we're playing minus. That means now that we have to, every single chord we play has to be a minor, which is okay. There's a diminished, there's a minor. And that's definitely not an A flat. There's A flat there. That's an A sharp. So there's problems when we're doing it like that. So we have to keep everything minor. So I think in that situation, I think it's better probably to keep it on major. And then we can get away with playing the minors, and then the root note will stay as... Yeah, that changed okay. So yeah, pretty tight, the clock. You can see it jumping around a bit here though, which means the JDXI's clock is not that great, but you could use something else coming into the JDXI to keep the clock tight. You could use your DAW if you wanted to, but the clock is running internally on here at the moment. So yeah, that's just a real quick look at the Noodler with the JDXI running with a Chord, interactive chord mode on here, and seeing how it changes things on the Noodler, and then in turn that then drives 4 channels of the multi-mode on the Blofeld. Been pretty impressed with that. That's going to produce some interesting collaboration, and really all I've got to do is just change my root chords here, and I can transpose a lot of different synth sounds. There's 4 on here. There's 3 synth parts, an analog and 2 digital, that can be transposed on here. And also there's, you know, a whole range of synth parts on here that we can transpose. And then on top of that, we can then send MIDI out. On the Noodler itself, we can go MIDI out further and control other gear. So I think probably in the next video, what I'd like to do is, instead of running the Blofeld, I think the Blofeld is limited in its multi-timbral ability. We might try something more beefy that can definitely handle multi-timbral stuff, and we'll go with, I think, the Korg M3. That also has an inbuilt sequencer on it as well, and maybe we might get it to run the clock, see how much more stable that is. But we'll see how we go. If you guys want to know more about the Noodler, please leave a comment below. Ask me questions. I can do videos on this in terms of how to use this sort of stuff. I haven't done any tutorials or anything like that on there. There's a few out there. If you guys want to know anything more about the interactive chord mode, there's a link in the description that goes over exactly how that works. I haven't done any videos on the Blofeld yet. I've only had this for a few weeks. If you're interested to know more about what this does, let me know. Other than that, that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.